What is going on, Raider Nation? It's your boy Sanjit back at it with another video. Today, we have some interesting updates that is coming out of the Las Vegas Raiders camp. These are things related to the Raiders, and I shouldn't even say camp at this point because technically the season is here, right? Like, preseason's over. We have 2 weeks until that first game against the Patriots. And I'm excited as hell, man. And we're getting some updates, and guys are starting to win jobs. Some of that stuff's starting to be announced a little bit. Some guys are even now officially being waived. And I just want to kind of state this before we really get into this video. I'll probably have a ton of different videos come out over like each day because of the fact that some trades will happen potentially, some cuts will happen potentially. That I think we'll have to talk about, right? Some surprise cuts as well, which we might even go live if the wrong guy gets cut, right? I don't even know if I say wrong or right, but Jackson Powers-Johnson has officially won the Las Vegas Raiders starting guard position. Not shocking. I expected Jackson Powers-Johnson to win, truth be told, but a lot of people weren't 100% sure if he'd end up starting for the Raiders. Now, I posed the question as to why Pete Carroll would make Jackson Powers-Johnson have to, quote unquote, earn the starting job when, most of us agree with this. Jackson Powers-Johnson is if he's not the most, he is one of the 2 or 3 most physically dominant offensive linemen in the NFL. And I say the words physically dominant. I'm not saying best, I'm saying physically dominant. Tyler Smith, Jackson Powers-Johnson, Creed Humphrey, those 3 guys that are at a different level in terms of the physicality, the aggressive tendencies that these guys play with. And you can make the argument Tyler Smith and JPJ are even a step above Creed Humphrey at this point. To me, when I would watch JPJ's tape, this guy's absolutely incredible. And some people were concerned or surprised that he had to kind of fight for that job. Going back to like April, May, Jackson Powers-Johnson introduced himself to Ashton Jeanty as your starting center. And that was caught on video, right? Everybody kind of saw that clip. We talked about it on this channel. And he played center, literally. Even as training camp begun, he was your starting center. And I believe Jordan Meredith was always kind of the backup center. But at some point, Meredith started to flash. And at some point, the Raiders decided we need to move Jackson Powers-Johnson over to right guard. Now, keep in mind, Alex Cappa was your starting right guard at that point. But the Raiders decided we're going to make JPJ that guy, and we'll have him kind of battle it out with Alex Cappa. And JPJ obviously ended up winning the job, which again, to me, it's not surprising. And maybe this speaks more volumes to what the Raiders kind of saw in Alex Cappa relative to Jordan Meredith. Maybe they felt like Meredith has more upside as a starting center than Cappa did as a guard. And you even have to look at like the long term, right? Cappa's old, right? Not old, but he's older. He's, had a major injury just 2 years ago. While Meredith is still young, right? He's still young. He's in his prime. He's still going to continue to develop and get better. So I think it's kind of just made sense for the Raiders to go forward with JPJ. But he has officially won the starting right guard position. And I think the Raiders' offensive line looks pretty solid, right? And let's talk about it a little bit. So Dylan Parham, in my opinion, has been the most surprising offensive lineman for me. Because I knew what Colton Miller already was. I knew what Jackson Powers-Johnson already was. I knew what those guys provide the Raiders. Colton Miller is a top 12 left tackle. Jackson Powers-Johnson is a top tier interior offensive lineman. I knew that we were going to get 2 guys that were physically dominant. Very, very good run blockers. Really solid in pass pro as well. Dylan Parham, I actually thought would potentially get replaced. And this guy came into this season. He just looks different. Talk about a year 4 leap from a guy in Dylan Parham. The guy looks absolutely incredible this season. Now, we'll see how he kind of develops over the course of the season and how he kind of shows us, right? He has to be consistent. He has to actually go out there and put it out there on tape. And then hopefully if he has a good season, the Raiders do extend him. And we can kind of figure out the offensive line like long term. But Dylan Parham by far has been the most impressive player in my opinion. So we have 3 of the 5 offensive linemen for the Raiders that I'm pretty damn confident in. I think Colton Miller, Dylan Parham, Jackson Powers-Johnson are all really, really good run blockers. And I think at some point this season, we'll see about pass pro, but as a run team, I think we'll have a lot of success. Now, the concern, of course, is going to be the center and the right tackle. Jordan Meredith, I think the concern for me is I just haven't seen enough from him. We'll see if over the course of like an actual season or over an actual game, right? Like 60 snaps. We'll see what he actually does out there. He doesn't have as many losing snaps as, for example, like Thayer Munford had, of course, this preseason. He probably, Meredith specifically, had like 1 or 2 losing snaps in the first game that he played, 1 or 2 in this most recent. And Of course, do kind of keep in mind from that very, very first game, he played like 30, 40 snaps. So you're going to have losing snaps when you play that many snaps. DJ Glaze is a completely different player for me. I'm not sold on DJ Glaze. Now, I do think DJ Glaze still has upside and potential and can still develop into a potential Pro Bowl caliber right tackle. We don't even know what this guy's going to develop into. Like, Dylan Parham took that leap in year 4. Think about that. I will also state this, if your left guard or center isn't as good, it's not as big of a deal because you have guys all around them. If your right tackle's not that good, it could potentially ruin any given drive on any given play. Because a right tackle has to play in space. They have to get out there and get on an island. And, if an offense wants to run 4 or 5 wide receivers, then you're in a single one-on-one block as a right tackle. You have to be able to win that block. And DJ Glaze struggled a lot this preseason. He was constantly being pushed back. He was unable to anchor down. I think DJ Glaze would be a really, really good right guard or left guard because of the fact that this guy is strong. But as a right tackle, you have to be able to move as well as be strong, right? And he's just unable to move at times, and it leads to him getting pushed back. We will see what he kind of looks like this season. Obviously, you get better as you play, right? So I'm not sold on DJ Glaze. I'll be, reserved a little bit, but I am hoping he has success, right? I do hope that he ends up developing into an all-pro right tackle. So we'll see what ends up happening. Jackson Powers-Johnson is your starting guard at this point, but could Alex Cappa also kind of be kept? Because we got an update earlier. This one comes from a Raiders insider, Tristan Kuhn. You guys know who Tristan Kuhn is, Raiders scout. To me, he's very, very smart. Knows so many players, has a lot of insight. He's a great follow if you guys aren't already following him on Twitter. He said the Raiders plan to waive tackle Gottlieb Aziz and running back Chris Collier as they begin to cut down towards the 53. Safety Lonnie Johnson will be placed on injured reserve, designated to return. So those are some interesting updates that are kind of coming out, specifically because Gottlieb Aziz actually played guard for the Raiders a lot. And I think he can probably play tackle, and he may have actually taken snaps at tackle. I don't know 100% no, but I know for sure he played guard, and I actually thought he looked pretty good out there. Number 72 just stood out to me multiple times. But the Raiders have some pretty good options at guard, so, the fact that they're waiving at least this guy here tells me that the Raiders may actually look to waive some other guys. But other guys may actually make the roster, right? Like, will the Raiders roll into the season with potentially 5 guards? We got to keep in mind, Will Putnam at this point is going to pretty much be your backup center. So I think he'll be on the roster. You got Jackson Powers-Johnson. You got Alex Cappa. You have Dylan Parham. You have Caleb Rogers, the rookie. That's 4 guards right there. And, the 5th could be a guy like Antonio Mafi, potentially. We'll see what the Raiders actually end up doing. But they did release Gottlieb Aziz. I think he's a good football player. Hopefully they can bring him back to the practice squad. Also, just keep in mind, Laki Tossi's technically going to be on this roster as well, but I don't expect him to play at all this season. He's a good player for where he's at in his kind of development, but he's not a starting caliber player. He's nowhere near ready at this point. So we'll see what he can kind of do as he develops as well. The other guy that Tristan mentions here is running back Chris Collier. Collier is a guy that I personally really like. I wasn't sold on Zamir White or Raheem Mostert going into that final game. This was not sold. But both guys had a ton of carries, and I'm still not 100% sold that they're the long-term guys. I still think the Raiders have to add a running back. You have to add, second, third, fourth round running back in next year's class. There are so many good running backs around the NFL, and there's some teams that have like 3, 4, 5 good running backs. Maybe not 5, but there's teams that have like 2 or 3 good running backs. The Raiders only have one in Ashton Jeanty at this point. I'm still not sold on Zamir White or Raheem Mostert. Now, obviously, those guys will have success in certain situations, which I talked about in the video yesterday, but I am still not 100% sold that long-term those are our 2 guys. Chris Collier is a guy that I actually really liked, and I hope the Raiders are able to bring this guy back to the practice squad. Our running back room is interesting because we have Mostert, we have Zamir White, and even Sincere McCormick has flashed a lot over, in the past. That puts you at 4 running backs right there, and then Dylan Labe is a special teams ace, and he's under contract, so I don't expect him to be released. That puts you at 5 guys, or Chris Collier being the 6th. So you're not going to keep 6 running backs. So you're going to have to cut down probably 3, maybe 2, maybe 3. We'll see. I like Chris Collier. We'll see if he can, end up coming back to the Raiders. And of course, Lonnie Johnson will be placed on injured reserve. Not surprising at all. We had another update that came out yesterday outside of Jackson Powers Johnson winning that job. And that is that Pete Carroll told us that the Las Vegas Raiders are actually going to seek to acquire a veteran quarterback. This got a lot of Raider fans excited. Like, who's that quarterback that the Raiders will now bring in? Is it going to be Shedeur Sanders? Is it going to be Derek Carr potentially? And there's a lot of good options out there, especially given like that cut time is starting to come right at this point. I think for the Raiders, you obviously have to add a quarterback. You cannot roll into this quarterback with just Cam Miller as your quarterback. And you're also not going to just bring in some random rookie or some other random player as like your third quarterback. Like, I think the Raiders are going out there to get their second string quarterback. And I think Cam Miller is going to be the third string guy this season. Cam Miller started really, really, really high in the preseason, that first game. The guy flashed like crazy. But we saw this happen in the past. Who was the quarterback? It was Jared Stidham. May have been someone else. I can't remember exactly which quarterback it was. It was like 2 years ago, right as Derek Carr got benched. Quarterback comes in and has a lot of success in that first game, only to fall off the next couple of weeks. And I think it was Stidham. Don't quote me on that. My memory's not great. But, you think about quarterbacks that the Raiders could potentially target and why you want to go out and get one of those quarterbacks. I'm not out on Cam Miller. I think Cam Miller has long-term development upside. But you just got to give him some time. You got to let him develop. And let's see what he has next year, even the year after. And we've always known this is going to be the curve for an FCS quarterback coming into the NFL. We knew this is what was going to essentially happen. But let's look at realistic options for the Raiders. Let's at least talk about it. So I think a lot of people want the Raiders to bring in Shedeur Sanders. I think the one thing and why you can't bring in Shedeur is because there's always going to be, 20, 25% of the fan base, and maybe it's lower than that if you bring in Shedeur Sanders, they're going to be screaming for Shedeur. They're going to say, put this guy in. This guy's a great prospect. Let him be the guy. Even if Geno Smith is healthy, people will be pushing for Shedeur Sanders, right? It's extra noise that essentially gets kind of added. We've seen this even as Shedeur's with the Browns. People are making excuses for Shedeur, like crazy-ass excuses. The guy had 11 dropbacks in this most recent preseason game. He took 5 sacks on those 11 dropbacks. It's ridiculous. That was always the knock on Shedeur Sanders. The guy's just not a good quarterback. Maybe he develops. Maybe he becomes good over the course of his career. He has upside. He has potential. But the knock in college was this guy takes the ball. He doesn't throw the ball. He doesn't play within structure. Instead, he starts running backwards and he tries running out of the pocket. And, in the NFL, you're not running away from guys. And he took 5 sacks on his 11 plays. Now, the Browns do plan to keep him, at least that's the report coming out right now. I wouldn't be surprised that after the initial cuts end up happening, if the Browns release Shedeur just to try to get him back on the practice squad. I find it hard they're going to keep 5 quarterbacks. Now, they did already release Tyler Huntley. They're going to keep 4 active quarterbacks with Deshaun Watson going to the injured reserve, so he'll be the 5th quarterback they'll keep on the roster. But he won't count, obviously. And they have released Tyler Huntley, which some people think Huntley could be a potential fit for the Raiders. Tyler Huntley and then even Dorian Thompson-Robinson was released by the Eagles yesterday. Both of those quarterbacks, I think, have real potential. And I think for the Raiders, you can bring both of those guys in. Tyler Huntley's a little bit older than DTR. But Dorian Thompson-Robinson is one of those guys that, he was initially, unfortunately, drafted to the Browns. I think the Browns are a terrible organization. He went to the Browns. He's had starting snaps. He's looked good at times, but, the Browns are the Browns, right? They're a bad organization. And he was eventually dealt to the Philadelphia Eagles, a phenomenal organization. And unfortunately for him in that year where he gets to the Eagles end up having multiple good quarterbacks. And the Eagles had 4 good quarterbacks, with DTR being essentially the odd man out, and they end up releasing him. So I don't think Dorian Thompson-Robinson gets released from the Eagles because he's a bad quarterback, but more so they have a ton of quarterbacks already, right? And I say that because I think for the Raiders, DTR just makes a lot of sense. I think DTR, if something happens to Geno Smith, I think Thompson-Robinson would be pretty much ready to step in, within the next 2 to 3 weeks. He'll learn the scheme, he'll learn the system, and he'd be ready to essentially go. And I think for the Raiders, that's exactly what you kind of want. You want a quarterback that is ready to step in at any given time. It's a guy that's he's a veteran at this point. He's still young, but he's a veteran. He has, starting experience in the NFL. And I think for the Raiders, he'd be a great option to add. Even Tyler Huntley, I'm not as high on Huntley in terms of like long-term potential, But Huntley could come in and win you football games as well. And these are free agents. These aren't guys you're potentially trading for. Ryan Tannehill's another guy that people have said, hey, maybe the Raiders go out and get him. He's a veteran option. Some people have mentioned Derek Carr as well. I don't think Derek Carr makes sense for the Raiders. Similar to Shedeur Sanders, you're going to get a fan base, part of the fan base is going to start screaming for these quarterbacks to come in and play, even as Geno Smith is hurt. Geno throws one interception. People are going to start saying, throw in Shedeur, throw in Derek. Another thing with Derek is, I don't think he's recovered from his injury, right? He retired literally because he had a huge shoulder issue. He retired like 2-3 months ago. So, Derek Carr obviously retired because he was not hurt, so he's not coming back. Some people have thrown out Tom Brady's name. Tom Brady's not coming here either, right? Tom Brady's definitely not coming. Although, I wouldn't hate the idea, right? I'm sure Tom Brady can still play. But, those are kind of some of the options. There's other guys that will eventually be available for trade. Carson Wentz, I think, is available, or he may have actually just been traded, so he might not be available at this point. Kenny Pickett, the Browns have 4 quarterbacks. I find it hard to believe you keep all 4 of these guys. Kenny Pickett could be a guy the Raiders could potentially bring in, and I think he kind of fits that mold. And again, one of the things we have to realize is you're not going to bring in, like Kirk Cousins and even Ryan Tannehill. It doesn't make sense to me because those quarterbacks are like Aiden O'Connell at this point. They're slow. They can't make plays. They're not that good at this point. As opposed to a guy like DTR or Tyler Huntley, Kenny Pickett as well kind of falls in this category. These guys are quick. These guys can make plays with their legs. And I think Chip Kelly's offense is designed. There's going to be a lot of bootlegs. There's going to be rollouts. There's going to be a lot of that stuff when the quarterback has to move. And, you got to be fast. Pete Carroll's mentioned Aiden O'Connell wasn't fast enough. The Raiders need quarterbacks that can kind of run what Chip Kelly wants. Sometimes you got an extended play. So I think there's a certain type of quarterback that the Raiders will go out there and get. And we'll see what ends up happening, right? Obviously, we have 2 weeks until the season actually begins. I think at some point we will end up going out there and getting a quarterback. Pete Carroll's basically said it. And finally, just a quick little update. Raiders head coach Pete Carroll told us yesterday that Patrick Graham will call the defense from the sidelines this season. He likes the way he connects with players in person and relays information that way rather than up in the booth. So if you guys don't remember this, Patrick Graham, for I believe it was like the first 2 years he was here, or maybe I've been just the first year he was here, he was on the sideline, and our head coach at that time, Josh McDaniels, said, we want Patrick Graham to move up into the booth. We don't think it makes sense for him to be on the sideline. In the booth, he'd be better. And people started to see the defense get a little bit better, right? People were like, hey, the defense actually looks better as Graham's up there in the booth. And I'll be honest, guys, I think being in the booth makes a lot of sense as a coordinator because you're up higher, one, so you can see the actual defense, you can see the actual plays a lot better from a higher perspective, and you have access to tools like right there. Like as a coordinator, as a defense coordinator, you'll have a guy that has a tablet. The play just happened. Hey, let me see what just happened. And then bam, he just quickly calls another play based off of what just happened. I'm not saying you can't do that on the sideline, but the sideline is just more stuff going on. People are running around. Water guy hits you here or there. It's just more that kind of happens. So I prefer guys to be in the booth, but it doesn't really matter, right? You can still get the same information. You can make those adjustments, drive by drive. A lot of that stuff's not happening play by play. It's happening drive by drive, which also goes through the whole, like, hey, go make a half game, like a halftime adjustment to your script or whatever. That stuff's fake. None of that stuff's real. They make adjustments every single drive, right, in the NFL. But Pete Carroll did say that Patrick Graham will be on the sideline this year, specifically because he's able to connect with his players a little bit better and relay information a little bit better. And that part of it is 100% fact. I agree with that 100%. Patrick Graham runs some sort of simulated pressure. He's going to talk to his guys, hey, this is what you're doing where you're making a mistake. Yes, Robbie Leonard can also do the same exact thing, but I think it's different when you're the actual play caller. You can tell guys certain things. If you decide, hey, Patrick Mahomes is every third down rolling to his right, we're gonna bring a slot corner off that same side. But I need to relay a specific message to this guy. It's better to be done when the coach is right there, essentially next to him as opposed to in the booth. So, we'll see what ends up happening, man. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. There will be probably another video coming today. A lot of updates that are coming out of the Las Vegas Raiders camp practice. Season's right around the corner, man. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thumbs up, subscribe, and I will see you guys next time with another video.